Some sad news about Grizz. He passed away last night on my chest after it became apparent that I was losing him. So I held him and tried to keep him comfortable. I just briefly want to explain what I think happened because I think it's always important. The sadness and the grief will remain, but I think it's important to try to at least explain what I think happened. It was natural causes. There wasn't an accident or anything. He's been fine. As you might know, I give my piggies a small piece of veggies, usually a piece of carrot in the morning, as well as vitamin C. Yesterday morning, he took his vitamin C. He didn't seem to really want to eat his carrot. And I picked him up and he seemed bloated, but his body also seemed extra firm, where sometimes with the bloat it's hollow and a little bit like a balloon where it's taut but kind of squishy. This was very firm. So I gave him baby gas drops and I gave him a little bit of pain medicine, meloxicam, and I gave him some Benevac. And I wanted to just let that take effect. So I checked on him a few hours later and he was eating hay, which made me very relieved. So I thought, things are looking better. Maybe I just misread the situation, but I tried to give him like a little piece of lettuce and another little chunk of carrot, which he didn't want. And then, so a little bit later, a few hours later, I picked him up and same thing, he felt bloated, and so I gave him more gas drops. But when I was doing that and I tried to feed him some critical care, when I put the first syringe in his mouth, I realized that the Benevac that I had squirted in there that I'd given him earlier in the day was still just sitting in his mouth. So I don't know if he actually was eating very much hay, but he didn't seem good. He didn't want to eat any critical care. He didn't want to take any medicine. He didn't want to drink any electrolyte mix. I couldn't get anything. I'd put it in his mouth, squirt it slow, and it would just all come out. And he wasn't lifting his head up really. He didn't want to crawl around. He has that one leg that I think was really broken a long time ago. So, he doesn't really walk as much as he kind of crawls and scoots. And he didn't want to do any of that. And his breathing was kind of shallow. And once I saw that basically I couldn't, there's plenty of pigs that don't want to eat, but when your pig's in GI stasis or they're bloated, you can still get a few syringes down. And I couldn't get anything in there. I also gave him cisapride. I had him on my lap. Cisapride is a motility drug, so if he was in GI stasis, it would help to get things moving again. But it is important that in a case like that, that you get some food in there so there's something to actually move. And so I sat with him and I was massaging his belly. He did poop a couple times, and they were regular looking poops, which with a pig that is in GI stasis, there are no poops. So like I said, his breathing was shallow. He wasn't looking good, and there's a certain point where I just wanted to be with him, have him lay with me. I brought Rufus with him, and they were laying together for a little while. Rufus got kind of stir crazy, impatient after about an hour, so I put him back, and I could tell that Grizz was just fading. And after another hour or so, he did pass. He sat quietly with me up until about the last 5 minutes, where his breathing became more shallow, and he started stirring a little bit, trying to move around. I've talked with Saskia about pigs with internal tumors. Someone came into the rescue a few weeks ago, and an entire side of this piggy was, there was a mass that was solid and hard. And Saskia explained that, there's not much you can do when a huge portion of their body is filled with a tumor. And they said that, their piggy was acting normally and wasn't showing any signs of pain or illness. And Saskia said, and that can be the case for many months, or, for a really long time. And then just all of a sudden, one day they just go downhill and can pass very quickly. And up until that point, if you didn't really know what to look for, you might not even know that there was anything. And I think that that's what happened to Grizz. I think he must have had some kind of internal tumor, and when they are in the center, they go unnoticed. Now, I will say that he did seem very thick, like a big, hefty piggy, despite his mobility issues. He was really strong and tough and active, and I think that he just must have had an internal tumor, and it got to a certain point where maybe the cancer was spreading to organs or just whatever happens at the later stages of these. And one of the symptoms when the body is shutting down is piggies can get bloated. I've talked about it before, where there's really two kinds of bloat. There's bloat that is a digestive issue that can be fatal, but if the gas can be managed and the GI stasis, or if that can be alleviated and then the digestion can be put back on track, piggies can get over it. But then there's also the kind of bloat that is more a symptom of a larger issue when the body is shutting down, and it's often that by the time you notice that bloat, that is basically like the end. I'm really upset. I love that kid so much. Because of his mobility issues, he had to have many baths, practically every week. And I was just always making sure that he was okay. And even though he did not like the baths, that's the silver lining with pigs that have special needs, or when you're going through an illness, is that you really bond with them. You really get to know them. And I'm grateful that I was able to get to know him and bond with him on a deeper level. And so it's like a shock and a surprise. And I mean, I love all these piggies here, but I was so fond of Grizz. His antics, despite his mobility issues, he would chase Rufus around, try to hump him even. And he was just this unstoppable, really bright, sweet guy. So I'm really sad. I'm devastated. But at the same time, I know that these type of tumors, when they're internal, often go unnoticed. And generally speaking, because of where they're positioned and how quickly they can grow, it's very difficult to treat them, to remove them, even if they are ever discovered. Plenty of times when you lose a piggy, you're fighting this illness and you think, oh, if I could have only done this, if I could only have done that. And I'm sure my mind will figure out ways to do that in this situation. But this is one of those seemingly sudden losses that I don't know if I had discovered it earlier, if there had been more time, I could have done anything about it. He was probably living with this tumor for many months, maybe years. I've had him for almost 2 years, And it's hard to say how old he was when I got him, when I rescued him from that abandoned closet. He was left in a closet when somebody skipped out on their rent. But I tried to do the best I could with them. I've been giving Rufus a lot of attention, and actually something that's upsetting is that when I was holding Rufus, I discovered a lump underneath his neck. It's about the size of a grape. It's free moving. He has an appointment for the vet in a couple days, so we'll see what it is and what the potential plan of action is for that. But I just wanted everyone to know. So I don't know what else to say. So gonna miss him. I'm going to go and bury him in a little while next to all the other piggies that I've lost over the years, that I've had the privilege to take care of. And I know that this is just part of it. And I don't regret any of it for a second. This heartache, this loss is part of life, relationships, and so there's so many of these piggies that need homes, and I'm not going to stop taking care of them just because this is really tough. Thank you guys for understanding.